When it comes to modern video games now, usually I expect a few different things when it comes to the single player experience. One, I've come to expect an open world, which may or may not be generic, but is usually filled with the same usual gameplay routine. You open up the world map, you set a marker objective, you travel to that marker objective, which may or may not take a long time to do depending on how big the game is. You complete said mission, you pull up the open world map, you create another marker objective, and you rinse and repeat this process dozens upon dozens of times over the next who knows how many hours, depending on how many hours the game actually is. I've also come to expect generic RPG mechanics, where you can level up your character and earn abilities that may or may not be useful, but they're in the game to give some kind of excuse that there is customization. Because customization apparently automatically means that the game has good content and gives the player some kind of reason to continue playing long after they would have gotten bored of the game under normal circumstances. I've also come to expect a bunch of useless marionettes, aka NPCs, which are important for populating a game world, but at the end of the day, really serve no purpose in terms of the actual gameplay. Sprinkle in a bunch of DLC, microtransactions, and season passes, and some pretty graphics, and you have yourself a formula for a AAA game. A modern AAA game. This is the problem with the video game industry, Part 6. Big budgeted games have become stale and formulaic. You know, many years ago, video games used to be the sort of thing where you go to the store, you buy them, you play them for so many hours, and you just get bored, and you move on to the next thing, and you enjoyed the experience you had, but you're ready to move on. These days, video games aren't really designed with that mentality. Instead, video game developers design their games with the intent that the player is going to play the game endlessly, forever, for as long as possible. And so to prevent the player from getting bored, game developers throw in things that really make the whole experience of their games just mundane and redundant. They'll throw in a bunch of RPG mechanics that the game probably doesn't even need. They'll make a big-ass open world type of setting, which it really at the end of the day is just a big clump of space that you have to navigate in order to play the damn thing at all. And very few games do that in a way that's actually fun. Spider-Man on PS4 and Horizon Zero Dawn are probably the best open world games that I've seen this console generation, just for that reason. But those games are in the minority when it comes to actually doing the open world formula correctly. Game developers will also create gameplay modes that don't really have an endgame to them, and the rewards for playing those gameplay modes are not good enough to justify anyone putting any type of serious time into them. Take, for example, Mortal Kombat 11's Combat League, a gameplay mode in which you do the same thing that you do pretty much in any other mode in the game, which is that you unlock character skins and gear pieces and profile icons. Only NetherRealm Studios has said that the ones that you unlock in this gameplay mode are exclusive, so I guess that makes them more special, and I should put more time into the game. A ridiculous amount of time where once I reach a specific rank, I start to lose points if I lose a single match, and it gets worse the higher you go. So the entire mode ends up feeling more grindy than it should be, or has any right to be. Why should I put any more time into the game when I've already earned the Platinum Trophy for it? Why should I put any more time into a game when I already feel like I've done everything that I want to do? And why are game developers so intent on making these big environments if they have no intention of filling that space with anything that feels meaningful or important? It seems that games like this are continuously made now, just so the game developers and the publisher behind these games can say, this is how big our game is. Our new game is bigger than the last game that we worked on. You should go pre-order right now. Eventually it gets to a point where I've played this type of game so many different times that I'm just not excited for these things anymore, because I've come to expect the same usual thing. And the same usual thing continuously gets made and released all the time. I end up playing the same formula over and over and over again to the point where I just get bored playing these types of games. And a very small number of these games really stand out from each other. And the ones that do stand out aren't the ones that win Game of the Year. They're not the ones that even get nominated for Game of the Year. Most of them. Instead, the games that get nominated for Game of the Year seem to prioritize storytelling over gameplay. So much so to the point where the gameplay itself could be complete garbage, and yet people will praise the game anyway. It's happened plenty of times this console generation. The Witcher 3 being a perfect example of what I'm talking about. God of War being another great example of what I'm talking about. Red Dead Redemption 2 being another great example of what I'm talking about. I guess gamers these days don't really care about gameplay. I guess all they care about is storytelling. Which is funny because the storytelling in modern video games now don't even begin to match up or equate with the games that came out years ago. So I just mentioned God of War. A lot of people would claim that God of War 2018 is a great game for its story, despite the fact that if you really think about it, the story in that game is stupid and it doesn't make any sense. And it doesn't match up to the older God of War games, which were far superior in terms of storytelling. And then you have other popular AAA games, such as the Assassin's Creed games, a lot of people like those, where the storytelling has improved with the last two entries of the series, but the gameplay has become more generic and more stale and more formulaic than it ever has been in the history of the series. Yet these are the very games that get nominated for Game of the Year. These are the very games that get 9s out of 10s and 10 out of 10s from these dumbass gaming journalists who have proven time and time again that their opinion really is irrelevant. It shouldn't be taken seriously. No matter whether it's an exclusive multiplayer experience, or if it's an exclusive single-player experience, or it's a hybrid of both, video games now really have become predictable because they reuse the same gameplay tropes, the same storytelling tropes, over and over again to the point where it doesn't even really make any sense to play them at all. And the sad truth is, I don't see this getting any better. If anything, I see it getting worse. If this console generation has proven anything, it's that video game developers have really run out of ideas, and now they're starting to copy each other more than ever, which is a real shame, because you gotta do a lot of searching in order to find games that are actually worth playing. And for anyone who's over the age of 21, it becomes more difficult over time to search through the vast library of mediocre garbage in order to find something that's actually worth your time and your money. And if there was ever a solution to this, I would say it would take one popular game and a cult following big enough in order to really change the industry for the better. But at this point, the industry is too far gone, and the odds of something like that happening are slim to none. And even if it did happen, that popular thing would also become stale and formulaic. Like it or not, this is the current state of the industry, and the system is not going to change. Big budgeted AAA games are not going to change. If anything, these big name video game publishers and development studios are going to become more greedy and more lazy as more time passes. So realistically, if you do find yourself in a position where you've just been disappointed consistently over and over and over again with modern video games, and you feel that you're just playing the same thing over and over again, which you really are, just with different variations, the only thing that I can really say is it's best to quit now while you're ahead. So there's 4 more parts to this small series. I originally planned for this to be 10 parts in total, and thus far I have gone over some major concerns, which include fanboyism and the damage that it's doing to video games, overpriced rip-off collector's editions, the problem with there being a case of sequelitis, too many sequels and not enough new IP, the fact that games are released incomplete and there's no such thing as a complete game anymore, and video game reviews being untrustworthy, be them big name well-known publication reviews or just common user reviews on the internet. And also in this video I've discussed the problem with AAA games and the fact that they've become way too predictable due to the lack of interesting ideas, which just goes back to the lack of innovation from these video game developers. Next time I will be discussing a more important issue, which is basically a discussion about microtransactions, season passes, and DLC. And I will be uploading part 7 soon.